Now, it doesn't matter if you're training towards calisthenics, yoga, handstands, or just bodyweight strength. The crow arm balance is a great beginner-friendly movement that anyone can learn. And the cool thing is it can be progressed to some really hard levels that can be foundations towards harder skills like handstand push-ups, press handstand, or advanced arm balances. So let's have a look at those beginner options and then add on those harder progressions as we go. Now, normally the crow position is seen as the knees being on top of the arms, on top of the elbows in that position. And then we balance like this with the head and shoulders down and the hips up nice and high. The frog position is very similar but tends to be sunken down a little bit more through the hips, and the knees tend to be more on the outside of the arms, so you're more into this position. But you will see a lot of variability person to person when they practice a crow position or a frog position. I highly recommend that you work to both of them and just find a position that you're most comfortable with to start with. So make sure the hands and wrists are nicely warmed up. Then we're going to externally rotate the hands. So when we externally rotate the hands, the elbows come in towards the midline and create more of a stronger position. If we internally rotate and stick the elbows out, it doesn't look very strong position because it isn't. So externally rotate those hands, bring those elbows in, and then just put the knees nicely on top of the elbows like that. And then we're just going to sink the head and shoulders down and forwards as we decrease the amount of weight in our toes. And then if you can, you could try lifting 1 foot up and then 2 feet up. Now notice when I went into that, I went very, very slowly into the position. When you're first learning, especially if you're a little bit nervous, the last thing you want to be doing is jumping into the position or kicking. You're more likely to land on your head, scare yourself, and then put yourself back in terms of training. I highly recommend that you video yourself from the side so you can see what you're doing as well, because you can visually see now that I'm in the wrong position to get my feet off the floor. I've got way too much weight backwards. As I go forwards, it visually looks like I'm more balanced. The head and shoulders come down, the hips come up, the feet become lighter. I can lift a foot up, I can lift that second foot up. I would just build time here. So it could be this position, just working up to 20, 30 positions. Just working up to 20 to 30 seconds in that position. If that's comfortable, same thing. Here, again, 20 to 30 seconds will be a good goal to get to. Next, we want to start to increase our window of balance in the position. So it's exactly the same as the handstand. We have a certain amount of movement we can go towards under balance. We have a certain amount of movement we can go towards over balance. The bigger the distance between the two, the more room for error we have, the more movement we can do without falling out of the position. Now, the safest way to start to play with this is get into your position that we just learned, lift the toes off the floor, and then just see if you can start to take the toes back towards the floor and then come back up again. So we're starting to flirt with the under balance, so falling back towards the feet and back up again. That should feel nice and safe. Then we can do exactly the same thing with the over balance, which is lean forwards, weight's going to go into the fingers a bit more, and then pull back again. So you can see I'm seesawing the hips and the shoulders by moving forwards and backwards. So I'm tipping up and down. If you've got a bit more control there, you can turn the hat around and now start to take the head down towards the floor. So exactly the same thing. Take the head down closer to the floor, ideally be able to touch, go all the way back, kiss the toes down on the other side. Now I'm seesawing between my overbalance. Now I've got lots of weight in the head. I'm going to bring the hips down, the head and shoulders up, go back towards the toes. Now this type of movement is much easier if you're in a more of a flatter crow position and not a high crow position. So more like that frog position. So now the knees are more on the outside of the elbows, my hips are lower. That means my head and shoulders can move up and down, the hips can do the opposite. If I'm in a way more stacked position like this, see now I can't get down because I'm just going to fall onto my head. There's going to be too much weight going over because the hips are already up and over the top. We can take that even further and start in more of a headstand position. So like this, knees onto the elbows. So now I've got lots of weight in the head and I have to shift the hips back and down, lifting the head and the shoulders to that crow position. Then I can go back down again. Now that could be from a full headstand position if you have it. Obviously stay safe, come back out with control all the time. Ideally you should be able to pause at any point. Next, let's explore the single leg version. So the single leg version looks like this, or like this, or like that, or like that. So there's lots of variation there. But the main thing we need to think about is when we take a leg out behind us, we have to compensate for that lever arm. So the more I have the legs stretched out in that direction, the more I have to compensate in that direction. If I go higher with the leg, I have to compensate less because there's less lever arm sticking that way, so I don't need to take the head and shoulders as far that way, but I'm probably going to have to take the head and shoulders down more because the leg's gone up. A nice way to start this is to have 1 foot on the floor, 1 foot on the elbow, and then just take the head and the shoulders down. Again, we're just trying to make this toe as light as possible, like we were when we were starting to learn the two-legged version. Come back out, swap over, do the same thing on the other side. So again, trying to equal what's in front to what's behind, so this foot starts to become lighter. Once I've got used to that, I'm just going to bring the lever arm in by bending this knee a bit more. Now what that's doing is it's going to make it much easier to lift this foot because I don't have as much weight in that direction. So now when I take the head and shoulders down, I can bend the leg and lift it up. Swap legs, exactly the same thing. See if I can bend, lift up. Now what I'm doing there is I'm bending and lifting the foot up, not backwards. If I go backwards there, then it will tend to do this. And I'm going to fall in that direction. So try and lift up without lifting the foot backwards and increasing the lever arm. Try and keep it exactly the same. It's much easier to control to start with. Once you have the lift off, you can start to bring it in, back into the two-legged version, and even try and get back out with the other leg. Next, we can start to play with the amount of arm bend. So this is taking us towards the crane position or even like a tuck planche position. So I go back into that crow, make myself nice and happy there. So I'm balanced, and all I'm going to do is take the head and shoulders up, straighten the arms. Notice the hips and the legs come down a little bit, straighten as much as you can, and then go back to bend. It doesn't mean you have to go all the way, you could just straighten a little bit and back. So I'm still working with that seesaw idea where I'm balancing what's behind to what's in front. But this is going into more of an advanced strength position. I can use toe assist. I could use head assist at the bottom to go between them. So now we're starting to open up lots of different options. We've got straighter arms, we've got more bent arms. We've got higher shoulders, higher hips, lower shoulders, lower hips. Single leg, meaning I can climb in and out of the position. We can play with other entries. We looked at the headstand position into the crow. We could go from a standing position into a straddle good morning, so taking the hips backwards, hands down towards the floor, hands into the crow base, elbows towards the knees. I can lift off into my crow. I can go back, I can take the hips backwards to counterbalance the arms and stand back up again. And I can practice that transfer of weight between the legs, into the arms, into the hands and back. I can make that a bigger movement, come down, go into the crow, go into the headstand, back into the crow, back into the feet, back into the good morning and all the way back up. You could do the same thing, but single leg, even go down to the headstand and back out and back up. Next, let's look at how we can take the crow up to a handstand position. So obviously we need a handstand position. It could be done back to wall or chest to wall if you need the support of that. But I'd highly recommend you have quite a bit of experience with the handstand before you start to play with the crow entries and exits. Now there's two main variations. There's using speed, momentum to take you up to the position, which is probably the easier one from a strength point of view, but can get out of control because just how fast everything moves. So I'm going to take the head and shoulders down fast. I'm going to take the hips up. So exactly the same as we was doing with this movement, where we was taking the head down towards the floor, but as the hips come up, I'm going to add a push. So as I come down, my legs come up, and I flick myself into the handstand. You could do exactly the same thing up against the wall, but just use the wall to help you from a balance point of view on the way up, and then on the way down you can slide down, step into the position, try and catch and come back out. And then the other way to do it is much slower. You could do this two-legged or one-legged entry. So the two-legged one would be much slower, head and shoulders come down, you lift up and then slowly go into it. Exactly the same on the way back down. Again, you could go back to wall if you need that balance help at the top. Or we go the single leg, exactly the same, just reach with one leg, then the other. Same when we come back down, one leg, then the second. If you're not quite ready for that yet, but you're close to it, you could do things like have your feet up on a box first, and then play with stepping into the position and back out, or doing a double leg, or the same but use the wall. So again, you could step into the position and back out, or you could double leg in and back out. So it doesn't matter what skills you're working towards, I'd highly recommend that you have a play with the different crow variations. Just make sure that you're working to your ability then you slowly progress through them in a controlled manner. If you're after coaching, check out my app, link is down in the description. Thumbs up and subscribe will be really appreciated, and it helps the channel out massively. Drop any requests down in the comments below, and I'll speak to you in the next one.